The hardest part about a betrayal isn't the anger. It's the absolute, suffocating humiliation. It's the feeling of standing in a tailored tuxedo, looking out at 200 of your closest friends and family, and realizing that the woman you built your entire life around has just made a complete fool out of you. I was 28 years old, standing at the altar of a beautiful, expensive botanical garden. The string quartet was playing. The sun was shining. Everything was perfect. But my bride, Maya, was nowhere to be found. After 20 minutes of awkward whispering from the guests, my best man, David, walked out from the bridal suite. His face was completely pale. He didn't say a word. He just handed me a folded piece of heavy cream-colored stationery. It was a note from Maya. I opened it. Her handwriting was rushed, frantic. Elias, I am so sorry. You are a good man, a safe man, but I don't think I can do safe for the rest of my life. Julian came to see me in the dressing room. We talked. I realized that the passionate, chaotic love we had is what my soul actually needs. I have to follow my heart. Please forgive me. Julian. Julian was her childhood best friend. He was a struggling musician, a guy who lived out of a van, constantly borrowed money, and never took responsibility for a single thing in his life. For 3 years, I had been the understanding, supportive fiancé. I paid for his dinners when he tagged along. I even helped him pay his rent a few times because Maya cried and begged me to help her brother. I wasn't just betrayed, I was used. I stood there for a long moment staring at the paper. My heart pounded so hard I thought my ribs would crack. I felt sick. I wanted to drop to my knees and scream, but I didn't. I folded the paper, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and took a deep breath. I walked over to the microphone set up for the officiant. "Excuse me, everyone," I said. My voice echoed across the quiet garden. "I am incredibly sorry to waste your weekend, but there will not be a wedding today. Maya has decided to leave with another man." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Maya's mother let out a loud sob. Her father looked like he was about to collapse. "The reception food is already paid for," I continued, my voice eerily calm. "Please go to the banquet hall, eat the steak, drink the open bar dry, but I will be going home." I walked down the aisle, past the staring faces of my family, took off my boutonniere, threw it in the trash, and drove to my empty house. The first night was agonizing. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark on the hardwood floor of the house I had bought for us, staring at the wall. For 3 years, I had been a complete fool. I was a successful architect. I worked 60-hour weeks to give Maya the life she wanted. She wanted to run a boutique clothing store, so I co-signed the commercial lease. She wanted a luxury SUV, so I put the down payment on it. She said she was stressed, so I paid for her yoga retreats. I had played the role of the reliable provider perfectly, assuming that my loyalty would be rewarded with a lifelong partnership. Instead, it just funded her fantasy life until she got bored of me. By sunrise, the crushing grief finally burned out, and in its place, a cold, absolute, and terrifying clarity set in. Maya wanted a passionate, chaotic life with a broke musician. I was going to give her exactly what she asked for. At 8 in the morning, I drove to the bank. I didn't call her. I didn't send angry text messages. I just sat down with my account manager and quietly dismantled her entire life. First, the joint checking account. All the money in it was my salary anyway. I transferred every single cent into a private account solely in my name and closed the joint one. Next, the credit cards. I was the primary account holder on the platinum card she used to buy inventory for her boutique, her clothes, and her daily lattes. I canceled it immediately. Then I called my lawyer. Because we weren't legally married yet, dividing assets was simple. What was in my name was mine. The commercial lease for her boutique was under my LLC. I called the landlord, paid the early termination penalty out of pocket, and told him the tenant would be vacating by the end of the week. Finally, I called the car dealership, the luxury SUV she drove away in. The title was in my name. I reported it as an unauthorized possession and told the bank they could repossess it if it wasn't returned to my driveway within 48 hours. By noon, I had completely severed the financial umbilical cord that kept her floating in her comfortable, insulated bubble. I turned off my phone, went home, and finally slept. 3 days later, I turned my phone back on. I had 74 missed calls from Maya, 20 from Julian, and dozens from her parents. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, sat on the couch, and called Maya back. She answered on the first ring. She was hysterical. "Elias, oh my God, what are you doing?" she screamed, her voice shrill and panicked. "My card declined at the grocery store. The landlord just called and said I have to clear out my boutique. And the police just showed up at Julian's apartment looking for my car. Are you insane?" I took a slow sip of my whiskey. It tasted fantastic. "I'm not insane, Maya," I said calmly. "I'm just respecting your choices." "By ruining my life," she sobbed. "I know you're hurt, Elias. I know I broke your heart, but this is incredibly petty. You can't just cut me off. I need that store." "You needed a safe, reliable man to pay for that store," I corrected her. "But you decided you didn't want a safe man. You wanted chaos. You wanted Julian. I am simply removing my safety net so you can fully experience the passionate life you chose." "Elias, please." Julian's voice suddenly came through the phone. He must have grabbed it from her. "Bro, come on, you're taking it too far. Maya's crying. You have plenty of money. Just leave the lease alone and let her keep the car. Don't be a bitter loser about this." I actually laughed. It was a genuine, quiet laugh. "Julian," I said smoothly, "you won the girl. You are the romantic hero of this movie. Which means it is now your job to pay her rent, fund her business, and buy her groceries. Good luck." I hung up and permanently blocked both of their numbers. The fallout over the next few months was spectacular. I didn't even have to look for it. Our mutual friends happily fed me the updates. Reality is a brutal teacher for people who live in fairy tales. Without my money, Maya's boutique was liquidated. She tried to take out a business loan, but because she had never actually managed the finances, she had zero credit history. She was denied. The SUV was towed from Julian's complex. Maya had to start taking the bus. Suddenly, her passionate, chaotic romance with Julian wasn't so romantic anymore. It's easy to be in love with a starving artist when you go home to a warm, paid-off house with a full fridge. It is much harder when you are the one starving. Julian, who was used to coasting through life on the generosity of others, suddenly found himself responsible for a high-maintenance woman who was drowning in stress. He couldn't afford her lifestyle. He couldn't even afford to take her out to dinner. The argument started almost immediately. According to our mutual friends, Maya resented him for being poor, and Julian resented her for being demanding. The beautiful, poetic love story she had blown up our wedding for turned into a miserable, bitter reality of unpaid electric bills and cheap ramen noodles. Meanwhile, my life skyrocketed. Without the massive financial drain of Maya's lifestyle, my savings exploded. I poured my energy into my architectural firm. I took on international projects I had previously turned down because Maya didn't like me traveling. I bought a boat. I got into the best physical shape of my life. I was thriving. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, I was sitting at a high-end cafe downtown, sketching a blueprint for a new commercial client. The bell above the door chimed, and I didn't look up until someone cast a shadow over my table. It was Maya. I almost didn't recognize her. The radiant, glowing woman I almost married was gone. Her hair was frizzy, her clothes looked worn, and there were dark, heavy bags under her eyes. She looked exhausted. She looked defeated. "Elias," she whispered, her voice trembling. I slowly put my pen down. I looked at her, feeling absolutely no anger, no sadness, and most importantly, no love. She was just a stranger. "Hello, Maya," I said politely. "Can I help you?" She sat down in the chair across from me without being invited. Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. You look amazing," she stammered, wiping a tear from her cheek. I made a mistake, Elias, the biggest mistake of my life." I leaned back, crossing my arms, and said nothing. "Julian is a loser," she choked out, a bitter edge entering her voice. "He doesn't work. He just plays his guitar and complains. We got evicted last month. I'm living in my parents' basement. They barely even speak to me because they are so embarrassed by what I did to you." She reached across the table, trying to grab my hand. I smoothly pulled my hand back, resting it on my notebook. "I miss you," she sobbed openly now, ignoring the stares of the other people in the cafe. "I miss our life. I miss how safe you made me feel. I was stupid. I got caught up in a fantasy, but I'm awake now. Elias, please, I know you loved me. We can go to counseling. We can start over. I stared at her for a long time. I remembered the absolute agony of standing at the altar. I remembered the nights I spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if I wasn't good enough, if I wasn't exciting enough. And then I looked at the pathetic, broken woman sitting in front of me, begging for a meal ticket. "Maya," I said, my voice completely flat and devoid of any emotion. "You didn't come back because you love me. You came back because you're broke." She flinched as if I had physically struck her. "No, that's not true. I love you." "You loved my bank account," I corrected her softly. "You loved the fact that I handled all the heavy lifting in life so you could play pretend. You threw away a devoted partner for a fantasy, and now that the fantasy is over, you want your ATM machine back. People make mistakes," she pleaded desperately. "I am begging you, Ilias, just give me one more chance." "I did give you a chance," I replied. "I gave you 3 years. I gave you my loyalty, my money, and my heart. You took all of it, and you left it in a note handed to my best man on our wedding day." I picked up my pen, signaling that the conversation was over. "I am not a backup plan, Maya, and I am certainly not a charity. You chose Julian, you chose chaos. I highly suggest you go home and learn how to live with it." "Elias, please don't do this to me," she cried, her voice cracking. "I have nothing." "Because you built your life on someone else's foundation," I said, looking her dead in the eyes. "And I took my foundation back." I signaled the waiter, dropped a $50 bill on the table to cover my coffee, and stood up. "Take care of yourself, Maya," I said. I didn't wait for her response. I turned my back on her and walked out of the cafe, stepping out into the bright, warm sunlight. I never saw her again. I heard through the grapevine that she and Julian eventually broke up in a screaming match in a grocery store parking lot. She works as a cashier now, struggling to pay off the massive credit card debt she racked up trying to maintain her lifestyle without my income. As for me, I got married 2 years later. I met a woman named Clara. She didn't need me to fund her life. She had her own career. She didn't need me to rescue her. She was her own hero. We built a partnership based on mutual respect, trust, and actual love. The greatest revenge in the world isn't yelling. It isn't trying to ruin someone's life in return. The greatest revenge is simply removing your presence, letting gravity do its job, and watching them fall while you continue to rise.